Hello and welcome back. We are so excited for you to be here. Belinda Mendoza and I am, if you're here, you understand like things come in waves when it comes to energy. And there's just this big need that I'm seeing and feeling and experiencing where just a lot of people are losing their beloved pets. And I am just so excited to have, who I imagine like the best person to talk on this. She's written books on pet loss. She does Feng Shui for pet loss with her clients. She did that for me when my beautiful, perfect yellow lab passed a couple of years ago. So I'm just so excited for you guys to be here and to learn from the amazing Belinda because she brings such a unique perspective. And sadly, she's in the middle of grieving one of her babies. I mean, the last time I saw Belinda, her baby was right there with her. So we are sharing this because we know it's on so many of your hearts. And especially just you even having that background in mental health too, and then doing Feng Shui and focusing on the home health, doing energy healing, like you really kind of cover all of the bases. So I'm excited to kind of just dive in with you. And I'm just going to kind of let you take the floor and kind of share what this journey has been like for you professionally up until you lost Gracie Bell. And then, just speaking to the hearts of the listeners who are like, oh my gosh, like I'm literally going through this right now. And it's nice to know somebody knows what I'm going through, but also may have some tips for me.
Wonderful. Exactly. I feel exactly those sentiments. I am so, I believe in timing and signs. And it's interesting that when you asked me to do the podcast over a month ago, I didn't anticipate that I would be losing my Yorkie of 16 years. I knew it was coming, but I didn't expect it to be when it happened, which was at Thanksgiving. So it's still very difficult, very raw for me, but I totally believe that this is a great time to talk about this because during the holidays, it's really hard for people who have lost pets, even years past. It brings up a lot of memories, especially if the pet died during those months, or just the fact that the holidays bring in so much of those emotions. So, as I said, I really, I'm wearing her picture. We often, will have something that reminds us of our pet that's passed, and it's important to do things that keep them close to you because it's still unreal. You still don't really feel like they're completely gone when you're going through it. So, but I like the fact that you did mention I have a clinical background in social work where I worked with terminally ill children that passed away. And what I always noticed was that they were always really wonderful in terms of their illnesses. They were living in the moment. It was the parents, of course, that were the grievers. And then it was sad that the medical staff wasn't really in tune to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would witness them just kind of trying to rush the process with them. And I really feel like grieving is such an important part of our life. It can be grieving the loss of a pet, a parent, a loved one, a relationship, a loss of a job, people that we've known people who've retired that have lost their life's work and didn't stay around very long after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really an important topic that I really feel is that so many people go through. And what I've learned through grieving is that a lot of people, I've read about this and also experienced it, is that grief is a lot of time is, I mean, excuse me, addictions like alcohol, drugs, are a lot of reasons is unresolved grief. And people are taking things to numb themselves because they really can't feel those emotions. And where this came around for me as being a feng shui consultant is because I really love working with people in improving their energy on all levels. Starts with the environment, and you're fully aware of this in the work you do, but in every aspect of their life. I love empowering people, making them feel better, helping them lift their vibrations. So grief is one of those things that's normal in life, but we're going to go through it at some point. As I said, it may not even be a human or a furry animal. It may be something else, like just grieving the loss of something that was not, happening for you. And so I really feel like that's the reason that it. And so in my work, when I have people that are going through this, I want to help them move through it because it's not getting rid of the grief, is moving through it and not having it stay in your body. because it creates stagnation. And in Feng Shui, we don't want stagnation because we know that that is what holds back good health and prosperity. So feel the feelings when you're grieving, whatever they are, in whatever ways are important for you that help you. And don't have anybody else judge that. Do it on your own timing and the way you feel and let that flow. It's okay to continue that process for a few months because it can be in your body in certain ways. So I feel like that's really important. When Gracie passed this, a couple of months ago, I was already going on a my little winter vacation down to the beach with her and my other Yorkie. And we were going to go there just to kind of chill out before the holidays and get kind of rejuvenated. So when she passed and I was already packed to go, I had to make all the arrangements for her here. And so I just left with my male Yorkie, Bodie, and he and I went for the week. And that was a real healing process for me because I could be alone with my emotions and I could do whatever I wanted, whether it was to cry, rant, rave, be angry, whatever it is for you. It's just you need to have that point in time where you can do that and not be judged, whether you're with, and so that's why sometimes it's hard to, when people know about what's happened to you, they want to jump in and say, all these things to make you feel better, which really all the person really needs is if they're going to be around people is to have good listeners because the grieving person really needs to talk about it. They need to let their feelings out. And so that for me was a really good way of being alone and being out there. Of course, I talk to Bodhi like he's a human. And then I'm very spiritual. So I talk to my spirit guides. And so I get a chance to really let those emotions out in that way. I also had body work. I got a massage because when you store those emotions, your body gets very tight
Mm-hmm.
and very tense. And so it's whether it's sitting in a hot tub or going in, getting some kind of massage or body work is really important, to do that because it helps you. Again, you're pampering yourself, you're giving yourself something because you're going through a difficult time.
And the stagnation piece, I feel like, is huge. And that's
Yes.
why things like massages, like you're physically moving it out. And everyone here knows you're like me, like we love energy work, but like we have to have that physical piece so that things don't get trapped in our bodies, don't get trapped in our organs, right?
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned before we got on, is that pet loss for many people, including myself, can be more excruciating, more painful than the loss of a person in their life, like a relative, like a grandparent. Because the fact is, this is an animal that was dependent on you or something that was dependent on you for 24/7. And you
Mm-hmm.
had this person, in my case, 16 and a half years. So this is a person, a little furry sentient being that was with me every day. So when that is gone, you feel it viscerally and it can be more difficult. That's why some people don't really understand, well, it was a pet that died. Well, for me, and I think it's true for a lot of people, I don't have children. So, that was my little girl. So I make it emotional. So pardon me for that.
We
But,
are here to support you. And that's why I was honored that I mean, you literally just popped into my head and then said you were going through all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, we'll do it when you want, but like, we're just here to support you and totally validate that. And, when it comes to losing a pet, also, the thing that we don't think about, unless people point it out, is like the sensory aspect, right? Like being able to just pick up and hug her and smell her, and that unconditional love piece is what makes it so different
yeah,
than a human, right?
right.
Um, it's like I said, especially like a little Yorkie, like you could just pick her up and like put her on
Hmm.
your heart if you're having a hard day. She's immediately putting that perfect divine love, high frequency through your entire body. So it is really different. And I think that's why it's important for us to keep having these conversations. And I love that you have this beautiful Facebook group that is specifically for people who are grieving a pet and kind of going through that journey to share their story and feel heard by other people who get it. I know that would have been really helpful for me when I lost my dog. But you, again, like we're so loving and supportive of that. And I would love to know your perspective. So you went to the beach, so you were out of that environment. So I would assume that was, less triggering. So, and I don't know if you told me this or if somebody else did, but I just knew for myself that like I needed to get rid of like a lot of her stuff.
Mhm.
And then I wanted to keep the mementos, like pictures and things like that. But when it came to like her toys and her bed and stuff, like I didn't want it near me because it was just too much, too triggering for me. Do you think that that's just because of my way of grieving that particular relationship, or do you feel like there was like more of a science reason why I felt led to do that?
Well, I think you could probably more answer the science part when I explain this, and that is that I'm a firm believer in honoring the pet and doing something for it because that helps your healing.
Mm,
When my first pet died and I wrote the book about this, I created an altar as soon as I got home,
yeah.
which had her picture, it had a candle, it had flowers, and it was very beautiful. And so I had that. And so I did that for Gracie Bell. When I got back, when I was on the trip, is when they called me to let me know her ashes were ready. So that was another level of grief then, because that came up, I had to deal with that, which I didn't before. So when I got home and I was able to bring her home, then I created a nice, beautiful altar with her pictures and flowers and candles. It's still up, and it brings me joy, not grief. And so for that, if it's too difficult for people because it's so sensitive for them, then they might do something different. But it's not a matter of, it's all timing. You may feel like doing it a little bit later because you needing that a little more time. But I was with you on that. I didn't want to come home right away because I needed to be away because all of her things. I mean, I have her picture up everywhere in my house. It's, like the other one, the little Bodhi too. So when I came back, it took me about a week, but Gracie Bell was very adorned. She had beautiful hair, so I always had bows, and she had the latest couture. She had jewelry. I mean, she was always adorned. So I put all of her dresses because they're very nice, and all of her jewelry and all of that in a suitcase, and I have it, stored in my garage. And then I gathered things that were kind of used and whatever, and that because I'm a big supporter of Austin Pets Alive. And so I'm gonna, some beds and things that I've washed and what have you. And so I'll be giving those away. But basically her things that were really hers, I just put away because I don't want to be seeing that, every day because that would be hard. But creating something special for her with her picture and her ashes and that for a time, it'll probably not be there all the time. It'll move to maybe a shelf later on. But for now, it's important. In Feng Shui, we don't believe in putting ashes in the home because it's dead energy. It doesn't have any kind of vibration. So I always recommend people to, do something with those ashes. I plan to spread them in an ocean place when I travel, but not all of them. I did this when my mom passed away a couple of years. I took her ashes to Hawaii so that they could be amongst the whales, and then I brought some home. And so I'll do that with her. Right now, I haven't been anywhere to do that. But I always recommend that you create either a really beautiful garden in your backyard or front yard if you want, not a memorial, not a burial site or something that looks like, sad, but very beautiful. If you are going to put ashes in your home yard, if not, because I don't know if I'll be here forever, I didn't want to do that. And I actually would like my pet's ashes to be put in with mine when I go. So, and that's in my that's in my will. So, so I want their ashes to be around. So what I did with mom is I have some of her ashes in a really beautiful little container, ceramic, and then I have my first Yorkies in another one. And I have a big vase, and I created a very beautiful flower arrangement. And then it's on a shelf next to Buddha and some really beautiful things. And that's on my patio. And I spend a lot of time on my patio just to kind of journal and look at nature. So that's the way I've done it, is it because I know that I want to take those ashes with me at some point. I didn't want to put them in the yard, but that's one way of making it beautiful. So when you see it, you're reminded of beauty, not sadness. And the same thing with a garden if you did that in your yard. That's a thing that I highly recommend people do. And then if you have a hard time with your emotions, then journal. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I got through my grief from my first Yorkie, which led to the book, was I couldn't find anything around to help me feel better. I couldn't find anything to read on the internet. I just, and I didn't really want to talk about it in depth, the really deep feelings I had. So I journaled, what I was feeling, especially the first 3 nights, because her passing was so tragic. She was hit by a car. And so it was really hard for me. And so journaling helped me get those feelings out. So I recommend that. I also recommend, and this is all in due time. You don't, that's not to say you do it right away, but it can help you move through your emotions. And the other is to write your pet a letter, like, you're wishing them wellness over the Rainbow Bridge, and thanking them for what they brought to you and things like that. Because, it's things that you might want to say to them if they were here. And this way you can put it in a letter, and that can also help.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Thank you.
Hmm.
I'm so sorry that she went that way.
Yeah, that
I,
was that was a difficult one. I had never had that. Plus, I'd never had a pet that was had such a close relationship. And then when that happened, it really hit me very deeply, much harder, in a different way than Gracie Bell, because Gracie Bell, I've had her my whole life, and I've nurtured her, I've taken care of her up until the last 3 months. She was at the chiropractor, she was getting acupuncture, she was getting groomed, that was all going on still. So it was, the loss is there and deep, but it didn't hit me like a trauma shock, like when the other Yorkie was killed that way. And
mm,
that's a difference that people can have. I remember the
yeah.
first week that my Bella Luna died. I didn't have anybody that I wanted to talk to, and I didn't have anything that was making me feel good. And so I sought a support group, a pet loss support group, which I also recommend. Didn't know where to find that, so Googled, and it was through the Austin Humane Society. And so I thought, okay, and this was like about a week after. I remember going to the meeting and sitting there being very quiet. I was just so vulnerable, just not feeling like I could even, at any moment I would be breaking down. So I was very, cautious going there, but I sat by myself kind of in the back. There wasn't that many people, maybe 12. But what I noticed was that as they went around, the counselor asked them, what to talk about their pet or whatever. There was a lady that was grieving her pet who had passed 10 years ago, like it happened yesterday. There was another lady grieving a pet that died like the same time or longer. And I was angry. I mean, I was angry. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you doing here? I mean, you should be over that. My dog just died. I have a right to be here. This was the feelings I was having because, I was in such pain. So I realized that what's happening with those people is that they didn't grieve the loss when it happened. They pushed it aside. They tried not to think about it. They probably kept all the things around them so that the pet could be there. They didn't grieve those feelings. So 10 years later, it's like it happened yesterday, raw. And that's why it's so important in the beginning to let those feelings out. And even if it comes months later or a year later that you experience something and you have a breakdown, allow that, because that's a little bit more of what, the loss that you were feeling didn't get resolved. And that's really important because you don't want the grief to be with you in a sad way your whole life. You want it to be with you because you miss them, but hopefully it turns into memories of joy and gratitude and love, but not sadness. And you've heard that where people say, well, I really, you never stop grieving. Yes, in a way that's true, but not at the point where it's causing you pain and stagnation.
Right. Yeah. And if it's cool, I want to share my story because I have a lot of new people in my world since the first time that I had you on the pod. But
Yes.
I just kind of knew that when my lab was ready, that it was going to happen quick because she was just very healthy. She's, outlived most labs. And so her and I actually had a call with the beautiful person that I referred to you, which I'm so excited for you to talk to her. Because without her, the reason I'm sharing this is like if I didn't have her and like that type of resource, like I literally have no idea what shape I would have been in. So, I met with this animal communicator, and basically my dog was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like I don't feel great, but like I'm okay. And I'm like, no, I can tell something's really wrong. And our counselor verified, like, yeah, like she's really, really sick and she only has like a few weeks. And so my dog and I actually like bartered back and forth of like when we were going to let her pass. And, that same counselor was on the phone the entire process. We had this beautiful, wonderful doctor who came to our house to allow her to pass there, surrounded by friends. And cookies and like all of the things she could possibly want. And so not only was it so healing for me to know that she was going exactly, well, I didn't know exactly because she's like me. We love all water, river, Hawaii, Montana, Alaska, doesn't matter. Just we love water, we love being outside. And so it was very beautiful for me to know exactly where she was going. She's like, I'm on a little river bend and there's so many deer and bunny here and they're all my friends. And she actually had she had a dog and a cat that specifically came to meet her at the bridge. And they were two animals that were in my life for, I mean, one of them was only in my life for like 5 minutes. I just remember seeing him at the shelter and being so obsessed with him. And my parents wouldn't let me get him. And I was distraught. And then this cat who I rescued and adopted, but she just was too stray and she kept getting out. And I was like, all right, go live your life. I did everything I could for you. They were literally there for her because of what I had done for them. And it was this whole other layer of like spirituality when it comes to our pets, because I had no idea that I had that much of effect on this one dog and then this cat, right? And it's what we preach to our clients, right? Like the higher your vibration, the more you're spreading love. And the more you're spreading love, like you have no idea how much you could have influenced that one person and that one interaction without even saying anything. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, like she is so well taken care of. Like she's in this beautiful place. Like she's having so much fun. She told me exactly the sign she was going to send me when she was like fully integrated and happy there. And she did. And of course, I stayed on the phone with a counselor for like an hour during that transition. And then I went out to dinner with a bunch of my friends and we just all told like our favorite story about her and like all the things that she had helped. Because she was one of my greatest teachers. She was a very powerful teacher when it came to, my self-esteem and the things that I truly wanted for my life and giving myself permission to actually like really dream that big and think that big. And now I have this like beautiful, perfect, energy on the other side who's just pushing and supporting me in like all these beautiful ways. And so I just want to share that in case no one's like thought of having that type of approach. Like if you do have some type of preparation, like if you know that it's coming, like there are amazing people who can literally hold your hand throughout the entire process. And I just wanted to share that.
That's very, very important. And what the main thing that I pull from that is that you really need to not be alone through the process. You need to find somebody that you're comfortable with, whether it's an animal communicator or a good friend or a spiritual counselor. That was so healing for you to hear the words from somebody else to say she's okay and all of that. I mean, that is just powerful. So that's what I highly recommend that people don't go through the grief alone, that they do reach out somewhere, somehow for help and support because it's so important for you not to stay in that really painful place. And
Yeah.
I really like the fact that, she was sharing with you the things about your own dog because it gave you that sense of relief. I wanted to have someone come to the house. I had searched out someone. I had already met her. I was taking Gracie to her for care so that she would get to know her so that when it was time, I could call her and set it up so she could pass in my home. So it was unexpected that this happened, that I took her to the doctor and I had to, the same day, had to let her go. So it didn't happen that way. But if it's possible, I highly recommend it. And I would hope that most people know this, especially if they're animal lovers, but you don't ever want your pet to die alone, and for some people it's too hard, they if there's some, especially if it passes in a hospital, they and the vet says, well, we can take it for it from here and you can go on. Sometimes that's the way people feel because it's too hard for them, but really it's not only healing for the pet, because it does, even if it's transitioning and you don't think it's hearing you or seeing you, it's feeling you. And so, having your pet know that you're there and that you love them and that you're allowing them to pass with that is incredible. And it ultimately heals your heart too, as hard as it is. Um, and so that was important. And they had a really nice room in the hospital that was for that, so it didn't feel like it was a sterile hospital room. It had candles and low lighting and a nice soft bed, and so it was I was able to be with her, through the process and after for a little while. And so that was important, that you really want to be there if you can, because you'll look back later and go, gosh, I didn't do that the first time. Then nobody asked me for a lock of her hair, and this vet did. And I said, oh yeah, that would be really nice. I didn't even think about that. And so I brought that home, and so I like that idea too, just having a little bit part of her there. Now, one thing is that my mom, it passed about 2 years ago, and prior to that, I had no not meant I hadn't had any losses. If I had some, they were so distant that, I went to the funeral, but it wasn't anything impactful. When my mom passed, it was really hard. She was my touchstone. It was very difficult. Well, with that passing, I got so many signs from mom. I mean, everywhere I went, I got a sign that, that was her. She was there. Her favorite song would come on, or, her favorite flower would show up, and all of that. I was just, when I went to Hawaii, I mean, she was just there. Everywhere we went, I could feel her presence, and it was powerful. With Gracie for a week, and of course, part of it was being at the beach and being distracted. But even when I came back and got the ashes and put the altar and did all of that, I even did a little memorial for her with my friends. I began a Yorkie group 9 years ago, so I have a lot of Yorkie friends, and so several of them came and we had a brunch for Gracie. So they brought their Yorkies, and I brought her picture and some flowers, and we kind of toasted Gracie and had a little memorial brunch, if you will, and that felt good. But even after that, I didn't have any signs from her. I didn't feel like she was around. My male Yorkie, on the other hand, I feel like he's always looking at something.
Mm-hmm.
He's always staring, but I didn't feel anything. And then one day I walked in the kitchen. I had already cleaned the home and I was mopping the floors. I always keep my floors immaculate because I have little dogs. And so I was mopping the floor, and that evening I went and I saw something that looked like a dried leaf on the floor. And so I just ignored it. I went to bed. Next morning, I saw it. I picked it up, threw it in the trash. And then I went and did some other things. I came back and it was on the floor again. And I said, oh, I guess I missed the trash can. I picked it up. It wasn't a dried leaf. It was her top notch. She has a rubber band and then she gets her bow. When she went to the hospital, I took the bow off, but left the top notch. When she passed, or she was laying on the table before the process, I took the little top notch off and I said, you don't have to wear this anymore. So I didn't remember what happened to it.
Wow.
So when I got home and I saw that and it had a little bit of her hair on it, I said, oh, there she is.
That's amazing and so cute, and like just shows also like how in tune she was, that like that was such an important thing. And like definitely if you're here and you understand dogs, like Yorkies, like they love their
Yeah, and
little
she always wore that. So
bow.
that was her way of telling me, yeah, I'm here. I'm okay. I'm doing all right, and that was the key moment for me. It had to be something that I would recognize. And now I feel probably I think she didn't come before because it was too hard. And I think now that I was able to accept that, I think I'll be experiencing seeing her her feeling her presence more and things of that nature. Now, the other thing that happens, and this is the case with my other Yorkie, is dogs grieve. And so by him grieving, and it's obvious because he's a real lively dog and he sleeps a lot and he's been kind of just down a lot. And so with that, it makes it hard on me because I'm like, okay, so this happens to people, if they have another pet. We've often heard where people had a pet and the other pet that was close to them died shortly after that because, it was so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So make a point of, going overboard with the pet that you have, giving them extra love and care. Making a point to take him for walks every day and have him be around other dogs because he loves that. And including him in a lot more things, not leaving him at home as much, and those are things that are healing for both of us. But it is important because the other dogs, a lot of times people are in such grief over here, they're neglecting the dog's feelings. They're feeding the dog and taking care of it, but really the dog is also having some emotional, feelings about it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that because that was definitely a huge piece to me going through what I wanted to go through because I literally just did a podcast about cats and I'm obsessed with my cat. But I needed to check on him too. And being the independent little man who wanted me all to himself, it's like, yeah, mom, she's been sick and I'm glad that you are letting me know because I I need to like do more to take care of myself because, I don't want to get sick like that. And I was like, all right. And so my cat actually took this whole initiative where, I mean, he was always healthy, but he was kind of avoiding some deeper work. And then that was kind of the kick in the butt that he needed. And he was like, I'm willing to do whatever I need to be my healthiest self so I can be there for you. So
Mhm. Yeah.
that was another thing that was really helpful because think of it from like a human, right? Like God forbid someone dies of a heart attack and you're like, oh, I'm probably need to start working and paying attention to my heart because my doctor has said XYZ. So I think too, again, just like how deeply spiritual these animals are and like how they're always trying to help us be our highest and best.
Mhm.
It really just comes full circle when you start kind of seeing things from this lens.
Yes. And, Gracie Bell, I felt was an old soul. When I brought them both, they're both the same age. They're different moms, same dad. And they were basically the same. But she was the shyer one and very wouldn't do anything, wouldn't come out. And he was the lively one. So with them being together, he brought her out. And so he taught her a lot of things. He would jump on the couch or jump somewhere and she was afraid. And then she started doing it. Well, she ended up over the time being the alpha dog. She was in charge. And at Yorkie meetups, she would always stay by my side. She would never go anywhere and play with the other dogs. If they came near her, she played and wagged her tail, but she really didn't. But what I did notice, if she saw an injured dog or a dog didn't feel well, she went over there and sat next to it or laid next to it. And so she was very comforting that way, but she was tough. Like I said, with my other Yorkie, she was in charge. And so that was really nice to see that, our dogs can have those personalities that help us,
Absolutely. Yeah.
help us with our own, empowerment,
I
and our own
mean,
strength.
yeah, she seemed very Queen Empress to me. Like, I'm here to be of service. You can come to me. But
Mhm.
then if someone needs her help, she's right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like I said, when you're going through grief, don't judge yourself. The stages of grief are, what are they say? Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance in that order, but they can flip-flop. So you can
Right.
have depression first because you're not dealing with the anger. And so whatever way it is, don't judge it, just allow it to happen and let it flow because, that's part of the whole, like I said, grieving process.
Mhm.
And then with your other pets, like I said, they bring up a lot of those feelings that you might have not dealt with yet.
Exactly. They're always going to call us out, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whether they're in the physical or the non-physical. And I feel like I was called out a lot when she first passed, and I was having to navigate some difficult things because you think we had all of our coping mechanisms, and she's like, you're not using these bad coping mechanisms with your grief with me. Like, you're going to face this and you're going to do things the healthy way, which was involving a lot of people and asking for a lot of support, asking for a lot of help. And that changed everything. And that has healed so much of, I mean, I still have somewhere to go with like asking for help. But I mean, talk about being at your most vulnerable, right?
Yes. Yes. And it's so healing. I think you're the same as I in many ways in the sense of being business women and self-starters and self-sufficient, independent. So it's rare for us to think that we can't handle anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happened to me, when the first Yorkie passed, it just took me down and it shocked me because I thought I could handle things better than that. But then you realize that is what makes you the strongest. When you can go through something so difficult, be so vulnerable, allow your emotions to come out. You come out of that such a stronger person. In the Yorkie group, we've had a lot of losses, and they contact me because they knew that I had gone through it. And so what do I do when I meet up with them? I don't start talking about what they need to be feeling, doing whatever. I sit with them. It's just to sit with them, to let them know you're there for them. Then they will share with you what they feel and what they need. That's really what the grieving person wants and needs, is to be able to share the stories, be able to talk about it, and not feel judged and not feel any kind of embarrassment. And so that was something. And so even in my work now, when I am helping people go through losses, which can be transitions in life, like a divorce, it's the same process. I mean, when I divorced, my husband and I had come to the point where we both wanted it. And so we had gone through counseling. It was already there. He moved out. And that whole week that had moved out for 2 weeks, I was really, really distraught and depressed. And I was running, I was staying busy. I didn't want to feel anything. It was very hard. And I asked my counselor, I said, why am I going through this? I wanted the divorce as much as him. I don't really want him in my life. It's okay that he's gone. Why am I feeling this way? And he said, and it broke me down because I had never thought of it this way. He said, you're not grieving the loss of him, you're grieving the loss of the dream.
Exactly.
Right? The
Mm-hmm.
fact that you had a dream of having a relationship and a marriage and a life together. So when I'm with clients and they're going through this, I really, help them through that in the sense of saying it's okay, even if you don't want him in your life, you still are going to have to go through this grief process of letting go of what could have been.
Exactly.
Because many people don't see it that way. They just think I just need to move on. I mean, I don't really need that. And or if a certain person has been fired from a job and they put their all into it and they've been let go, that can be devastating on many levels because that was their identity. They had friends there. There was a life that they enjoyed there. So things like that can happen. And it's all part of the same process of life that the ebbs and flows, the yin and yang, we have sadness, we have joy. It's our job to let it flow through us and move through us. The most important things that people can do when they're grieving is to remember to breathe, because that's letting the emotion out and breathing in the new. If you know of nothing else to do, just take a moment and take breaths, because if you know when you're really in grief, you're choked up, you're tight, you know, and so this is a way of it's holding on. This is a way of letting it go. And it's a very simple thing you can do, throughout the day. And as you probably experienced, when you start to go out and you talk about your pet, or somebody sees you and asks you, where's so and so, what was your pet's name?
Lulu.
Lulu. They ask you, where's Lulu? And then all of a sudden it brings back the grief again, because you thought you had already processed it. I mean, I remember going to several places after Bella died and that we went to regularly, like Kinko's for copies and Michael's for crafts, and these people knew her.
Yeah.
So I had to go back. And as soon as I walked in, they said, "Where's Bella?" And then I would just break down again because it was like, oh, shoot, I forgot about that. You're ready to get out, because you've been through the process a little bit, but then something else will trigger it, or you'll pass, a place that reminds you of her or them. So again, all of that is okay. It's going to get better,
Absolutely.
especially if you're a spiritual person and you do believe that the animals that you have souls, and you know that they're traveling onto a place of bliss and a higher place. You can be find a sense of peace with that. I think what we have a hardest time is missing their presence. They're not with us physically, but on a spiritual level, they really are always with us.
Yeah. And I think that's also motivating for someone who's listening who is wanting to strengthen their intuition and especially their clairs because Luna was like 55 pounds, which is pretty small for a lab, but she was not graceful. And that's what I loved about her because I'm not that way either. And so when she jumped on the furniture, jumped on bed, it was like a plop. And so I would notice sometimes I'd wake and even now, like I'll wake up and I will feel like something plopped like on my legs. And that would be normally her spot. So they're always doing things for us behind the scenes if you're willing to just, tap into something new and like really strengthen that connection. They're going to come to you in ways you didn't expect. You mean just I used to say that her hair like traveled internationally because I would find it in like places I didn't even know existed because labs shed crazily. And still to this day, like I'll just randomly find a piece of her hair and I'm like, wow, that's pretty crazy. It's been a couple years and she's still letting me know she's around.
Well, and the thing about that, I'm a big believer in signs. I think the universe speaks to you through many mediums, and signs are one of them. And I had already asked the universe one time because it happened when I saw a rainbow. I felt like a dog had passed, and then I found out 2 days later somebody that I knew. So then from then on, I told the universe, is that my sign for that? And they was like, yes. So now every time I see a rainbow, I realize, okay, a dog has just now passed. I'm also feeling like it every time it's happened that I find out about the pet soon. But even if I don't, I'm recognizing that as, still a sign that a pet has gone to a higher place, and gratitude, you know, and for whoever's going through that, sharing that love to them, sending the love to them, because it's, that is a sign. And you mentioned about the jumping, very first night that I got home after Bella died. um it was the most distraught I've ever been in my life. I mean, I really can't even describe, the 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 emotions, the feelings. It was just difficult. I couldn't sleep. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened by this, what felt like an animal that had come in from the outside, jumped on my bed, was running and thumping and jumping and running on my bed. It had a lot of energy. It was a small dog. And I remember Bella was very petite. She didn't weigh much. And so I thought, I woke up and I'm looking all around. It was so real. And so I realized that was her. And I have read that when the soul passes, it's in a much more vibrant state. It's not sick. It's
Yeah.
not weak. It's strong.
Mm-hmm.
So that was me showing that she was vibrant, lots of energy, and she had, some power to her. And she came to me in the middle of the night to share with me that, she was there and she had gone through and she was okay. And
Amazing.
I can tell you, and I know you can too, I could swear on a Bible that it was real. I mean, I woke up because it was a feeling of something jumping on my bed.
I love that. I think the trippiest one I had was when I was on a plane and I just saw her on the plane and I was like, look at you.
Mhm.
Because I,
Yeah.
I always felt like she wouldn't do well on a plane because I can't just like put her in a kennel. Like that's not going to happen. So it was just funny that that was one of the ways that she made herself like the most visible ever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, like I can literally do anything now.
Yeah. Yeah, and so again, you want to get to a place where it's more neutral in the feelings, and you so they turn more to joy and laughter and good memories. I remember going by the place where she was hit, and I couldn't. I had to go around. I couldn't even go to that part of the city for a while, that part of the area for a long time, because it was too painful. Now I don't. She's not there in my mind. That's past. She's over here over in the bridge. So, but that took a while. And that can be the case for many people that they won't, go somewhere or do things because it reminds them. And then many, many people will tell you, I will never get a pet again. This was too painful. I'll never own another pet. And in reality, owning another pet, not right away, but owning a pet again is the most healing thing you can do. For your own heart, it opens up your heart, and it also helps another animal, who needs love. We have as Cesar Millan says, we have over 4 million dogs that get euthanized a year. We need more homes, not breeders. And if you can rescue a pet, I'm a big advocate of that. You're giving life and love to a pet that otherwise would be living in a cage. And so that will open your heart even more, is to take on another animal,
I'm
another
excited to
pet.
have so many dogs.
Do you have more than one?
No, I still haven't gotten one since her.
Oh, okay.
I kind of just said, universe, when I'm like really in a settled place on the property that I love, like I'm gonna adopt all the dogs.
Yes, yes.
Just give me some time.
Yes, I've often said if I had a big ranch or a big property, enclosed, and I had help, I would definitely have many dogs
Yeah.
because, and I don't advocate getting a dog if you don't have accommodations. There's a lot of people that just adopt a dog or get a dog because they want the companionship, but they're not home, they don't have the space, the dog's neglected. Um, but I'm with you, I've told my dad asked me, "Are you gonna get another animal or another pet after?" I said, "Well, hopefully Bodie will be around, a little longer. When it's his time. I probably won't get a pet right away, only for one reason, and that is that I would like to travel. And with my two pets, even though you can, take two pets on a plane, it's challenging unless you have somebody traveling with you. And so I really they've never been on a plane. I've never done that. And I always limited my vacations to like a week with a dog sitter. So now, bless you, I if when it's time, I would like to be able to have at least about a year on my own, just process everything and travel, and then think about another pet at that time. And I'll
Yeah.
always I'll always have Yorkies because they're a breed I love, and I'm very familiar with, and yeah.
Well, they will also possibly show up too, right? That's why I also just kind
Right.
of left it open, like, yeah.
Yes. Let me see here. Let me see here. Hang on. Let's see if you can see him. Can you see him?
Hi, sweet boy.
This is Bodie.
Hi, Mr. Bodie.
He's got his little Adidas jogging suit on
I love it. It's
because
so
we're cold
cute.
here. Austin finally got cold. So here it's very chilly.
So crazy.
But he sleeps most of the day unless I take him somewhere. He's of course he's 80 years old and human. So what can you
Exactly.
you can't expect him to run around and jump and everything. So as long as he's well fed and cared for and all of that, I think, he's in good shape. But yeah, so I appreciate, you wanting to talk about this subject because it is a big part of what I call having good feng shui, is being able to move through life with ease and joy and peace. And no matter what happens, what transitions you're going through that can be painful, is not staying in that stuck place, doing things for yourself that make you feel happy and better in the moment, and allowing your feelings to flow.
Absolutely. Well, we are so grateful for you sharing your story
Thank you.
and also your expertise.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
you so much.
of course. And I'm going to put a link to your Facebook group below. So again, if you
Yes.
guys are looking for support over pet loss, this is the place to just totally be yourself and like share and know that you're going to be held with love. And then I'm also going to put a link to Belinda's amazing book on Feng Shui for pet loss. And then just her contact info, especially if you're in the Austin area and you've always wanted to have a Feng Shui evaluation, like definitely reach out to Belinda.
And I can help anybody on Zoom. So
Oh,
you can
perfect.
live anywhere in the world and I can help you on Zoom.
Perfect. What do you do Bagua map?
I use the classical method, which has to
Okay,
do more with the compass,
got it.
but the Bagua is a part of the process that I do. Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, like I said, I'll put all those links below. We are sending you all so much love
Thank you.
and just so grateful that we were able to talk about this. I know it's not like fun to talk about, but I'm also being stretched to like talk about things that I'm very passionate about that usually aren't the hot trending topic. And this is definitely a big one for me. So thank you for really holding space for me as well, because it's been a
Oh,
while since I kind of shared my journey with that.
right. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah,
And
well, I'm
it's great
so
to see you
grateful.
again. And thank you very much.
Yes, so good to see you too. Thank you
Thank you.
everyone for being here. And give us a like if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're on one of the podcasts, please feel free to leave a review. Once a month, I choose a winner for people that are leaving 5-star reviews so that I can reach more people. And you could win a live free coaching call or energy healing session, whichever you prefer. And definitely please share this with a friend who could benefit from learning more about healing from pet loss. And we love you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy New Year.